Opening now. The webinar will begin in just a minute.
Good morning, everyone. This is Melinda Huntley with the Ohio Travel Association, and want to welcome you to the webinar. Just so you know, we are going to make this pretty casual, going over some of the information that came out yesterday. What I really want to do, though, is hear from you guys. So please submit any questions using the Q&A or the chat. And we'll also open up for questions at the end. So right now, I believe all your microphones are muted, but at the end, you'll be able to indicate, raise your hand, and we will let you in. So please, please, please post any questions, because that's really important for us to hear right now. Just for those of you who aren't familiar with OTA, we are a nonprofit organization. We are not the state agency. We are not funded by state dollars. We are supported by those in the travel industry. So we represent the industry interests. And I have put down here a mission statement. Together, we inspire, champion, empower the advancement of our industry. The key word in that is together. So we truly believe in the power of numbers and the power of all of us working together. But I think it's important for you guys to recognize, you know, our role as a nonprofit, and we work on your behalf. We are not the state agency. We're just conveying the information that we're hearing. All right, so let's just jump right into it. Who can open and when? As of yesterday afternoon, there was a notification, a press release by the governor that said all of these that are listed may open on June 10th. And the other thing is we're going to send you a PDF of this. So throughout this document, you're going to see some links. I'm going to send you the PDF. That way you'll be able to go into those links live as we go forward. All right, what don't we know about yet? Gambling industries. Horse racing is permitted without spectators. Auditoriums, stadiums, and arenas are still closed. Performance theaters, concert and music halls, they are also not permitted to open yet, according to the governor's office just this morning. Drive-in theaters are permitted to open. Parades, fairs, festivals, and carnivals not permitted to proceed. However, county fairs may open. And then amusement park, theme parks, and outdoor water parks are not permitted to open yet. What we've done is we went to the language that was available on the public orders that said all these specific businesses are closed, and we compared them to the language in the news release. And there's some inconsistencies. So throughout this, we're going to kind of talk about that and how do you interpret these orders. At the end of the day, if you're not sure if you should open, here are the things I'm recommending. You know, the reality is they put all of these businesses in a big old bucket. And, you know, we advised that this was going to be difficult from the very beginning, because as all of you know, if our customer experiences were all the same, then why would anyone visit our businesses? So we're all very distinctly different. And so chances are you are not going to see something that is spelled out very specific to your business in some of the guidelines. Now, if you're a museum, okay, right, get that. but there's others that just simply aren't going to be listed by name. So here's what we're advising. If you're uncertain, first of all, make sure you have your plan in place and in writing. And we're going to give you some guidance on that. Then contact your local health department. This by chance is how we were able to get the zip lines open, right? Because the zip lines weren't called out in the order. So they went to the local health department with their safety plans and said, look, here's what we're doing. Here's where we fall into. Can we open? If your health department says no, and you really believe you should open, then contact me. And at that point, then we will go to the governor's office and get clarification. The reason I'm saying go to your local health department first is time is of the essence. And if we, wait for the governor's office to clarify, it could not only bring attention something that they didn't think about, but there could also be a delay. If you're not comfortable with your local health department or you want to talk about your strategy, please contact us and let us know what's happening, because our goal is to get all of you open as soon as possible. All right, so again, among the many requests we have currently active at the governor's office, just to let you know, here's what we're trying to get some clarification on. We believe if you can have wedding receptions of up to 300 persons, why are we just calling out wedding receptions? We should be able to have meetings and conferences of up to 300 persons also, because in reality, an event center, a hotel, any type of venue that has meetings and conferences, we have a better ability to control social distancing in those situations, even more so than perhaps a wedding reception. So we are trying to get that clarified soon so we can notify everyone of that. A lot of questions about, okay, so amusement parks are closed, but there's some businesses that have amusement rides. So are the amusement rides able to open? So that, again, contact your local health department. If you have, a business that happens to have a few rides, you're not classified as a theme park, make sure you have the plan in place, make sure you know exactly what you're going to do, and then contact the local health department and see if you can get permission for that to open. So, and when you do that, also, what you want to do is link to those guidelines and businesses that are already open. So, and we want to know what's their plan for festivals and events. I mean, there was a fair advisory board that developed guidelines, and then they opened county fairs, but that kind of leaves this big old gap of other fairs and festivals and events that aren't necessarily county fairs. And so I want to know what is going to happen there. What is the strategy? What's the process for that? And so those are just three of the things that we have actively live right now that we're trying to find answers to. All right, here's the process. The reopening dates is controlled entirely by the governor's office. There was a travel and tourism task force that developed some of the guidelines. They were sent to him about 3 weeks ago. There is a separate task force that's addressing casinos and racinos, and there is a separate task force that looks at large venues, but in reality, most of those folks are sports teams. And so, the guidelines were sent to the governor, but the task force were not given the opportunity to provide necessarily guidance on reopening dates. Those dates are determined by the governor's office. There was a public health order that was in effect until I believe it was like May 29th or May 30th. I can't remember the exact date. Anyway, you saw some media last Friday and over the weekend say, oh my gosh, businesses can't open till July 1 because they reissued the order. We've clarified that. That does not mean businesses cannot open until then. As you've just seen yesterday, that just extended the order that was in place, but businesses can open before July 1. As you saw yesterday, we saw many of our entertainment businesses being given permission to open next week, which honestly I think is phenomenal because most of the time it's been a 2-week stretch. The fact that the governor gave us permission to open on the 10th, was really great. The most important thing I need you to understand right now is that what we've received is basically a newsletter, our news release, and we've gotten the guidelines, which have been kind of lumped in with the retail guidelines. There will be a public health order issued, and here's the link that will appear. It is really important that you read this public health order. We found, like with the restaurants opening, most of the restaurants, when they open their patios, followed the guidelines that were presented. But the public health order wasn't released until the evening before the patios were to open. And there were requirements in the public health order that weren't in the guidelines. For instance, the requirement to have people seated while eating and drinking did not appear in the restaurant guidelines. They appeared in the public health order. And that's why a lot of the restaurants, got in trouble, because they simply didn't even know that requirement was in place. So we're at OTA, we're keeping an eye on the public health order. As soon as that public health order is released, we will get an email out to everyone, but it's really important you because I don't know for certain, but in all likelihood, there may be additional guidance in there that we need to be aware of. All right. So what do we do about these folks who aren't open yet? I truly believe, like, they're industry peers, and we all have to be supporting them for the theme parks, the water parks, the performance venues, all of these things that aren't open yet. The CEO of Cedar Fair said a similar statement to this, and I think it's just perfect, that, all our businesses must have the same opportunity granted to other businesses in Ohio to operate and manage their businesses. We know that our businesses can control and manage capacity and flow. Most of them have plans in place. And we also know that most of our business are family and friend units. It's not necessarily the reason people are visiting our areas to meet new people and commingle with others. Most of the folks are coming in a unit that they've been quarantined with. It's a little different environment. There's not as much congregating. So these are the messages we continue to convey when we're talking to the governor's office and to others about making sure that our businesses open, and all our businesses open. All right, so what is required? As we've said before, there are just 5 basic protocols for all businesses. These are the 5 things you need to consider at all times, right? 1, employees require face coverings, and it's recommended for our customers. 2, daily health assessments. 3, hand washing, right? 4, clean and sanitize workplaces. And 5, and perhaps one of the most important, is limit capacity to meet social distancing guidelines. Now, note on this came from the state. It says establish maximum capacity at 50% of fire code. That's not the case. Don't follow that. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute. So what you need to think about is your customer experience, and there are a ton of guidelines out there. So you need to think on a modular basis. So your business operations, which we all have, follow the general office environment guidelines. If you have food service, follow the restaurant guidelines. If you have a retail shop, follow the retail guidelines. If wineries, they're following the manufacturing distribution guidelines. So you need to think, you need to look at these guidelines, and you need to see how they apply to your specific business, your employee interactions, and your guest interactions. Also note, they're not always consistent between guidelines. So when you look at general office environment and manufacturing, they're saying buffets aren't permitted. By the time you get to the restaurants, it says buffets are permitted, but you need to have a server. So as long as you can back it up and you can point to a guideline that says, hey, this said okay, I would go with the least restrictive, unless it's going to be itemized in the public health order that comes out. Again, we don't know what that's going to look like. All right, so these are all the guidelines that are currently available. And again, at the top, that's a hyperlink. So when you get this PDF, you can go straight to that page and pull these up. And so, just think about all of these different experiences. These are the ones that have guidelines, specific guidelines related to their operations. If you offer anything similar to these, you need to look at the guidelines that are available. And they add guidelines all the time. So I would, just bookmark this page and continue to look at it. There's also some really great sector-specific safety guidance out there. And so for attractions, for campgrounds, for restaurants, for lodging, we have provided a link where you can actually go and get some additional information or guidelines if you don't have them in place yet. In particular, the IAPA guidelines, I think, are really well done and go into detail about all of these items in the right-hand column. As far as what you could do. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Your number one reason for creating guidelines and a safety plan is to do whatever you can to keep your guests, your employees, and your vendors safe, right? If you keep that in mind, you're going to meet the guidance that's been outlined. You'll probably go above and beyond. So you need to remember, you're not doing this just because it's a regulation. Someone's telling you have to do this to open. You're doing this because you want to ensure that you are doing what you can to keep people healthy and safe. And the reality is that our visitors are expecting us to be different. They are expecting us to change. We've been doing a lot of marketing seminars. I'll talk about those in a minute. But, one of the things you have to remember is everybody out there knows exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And if you don't think you're not going to get somebody out there with a measuring tape at some point, like you're kidding yourself. It's like they know what to anticipate. So we have to remember that our guests, it's not going to be unusual for them. They're going to know what you're supposed to be doing. So what's making guests nervous about attractions? This was a study that came out and said most of them are concerned about maintaining the social distancing. And I thought this was interesting. 57%, they're worried about other guests not social distancing. So it's not just what you can do to keep the social distancing, but think about what policies can you put in place to ensure that people are doing that, because this is what folks are concerned about. So when you look at what, this was a study that was just out as of May 18, that was done on what would make you feel safe and comfortable going to museum or zoo, aquarium, right, theater, concert. Availability of a vaccine, 80%, seeing others visit, 59%. Now, seeing others visit was much lower in this list as of maybe even just a week ago. So the fact that has risen is kind of a good sign. So if they're kind of looking to see, are other people visiting? And then they will feel more comfortable. But you can see, and you'll have this list to go through, but these are the things they're going to expect and that will make them feel comfortable. All right, so getting into the specific guidelines that were released. What they did is they lumped entertainment into existing guidelines for retail, right, and services. So they're pretty generic, which is kind of what we expected, because it would be really hard to get too much detail for our businesses because we're so different, like I said. The number one thing on everything, and it's in bright red on the guidelines when you look at those, but it's in bold on this, is ensuring the social distancing. So for employees, what's required is making sure you have that social distancing of 6 feet or more between employees. If not, install a barrier. Businesses, must allow folks coming in to wear masks. All employees must wear facial coverings, except for these reasons, and these are the exclusions. The most important thing to remember here is what I would do right now, if you have employees who fall into these exclusions, create a written document that justifies why an employee is not wearing a facial covering, and keep it handy, right? So they're not saying you need to submit it to local health officials. They're saying upon request. So just have it handy if someone were to say something, but you might also consider, a placement of that employee. So if there is an employee who can't, because of these reasons, wear a facial covering, maybe they're not the ones you want to put front facing, because again, guests are expecting people to be wearing masks at this point. So what I'm going to do throughout this is also give this little guy with his hand up is what we're hearing. So these are things that, these are kind of like best practices we've picked up from elsewhere in the country, as well as other businesses in Ohio. Some ways that they're dealing with the facial coverings, right? So again, you'll have this PDF so you can look at it later, but these are some things we're hearing that businesses are doing to accommodate that request. All right, also required for employees, require your employees to stay home if symptomatic. That means you need to have policies in place. Are you communicating to your employees, these are the symptoms, please do not come into work if you exhibit these symptoms. Require regular hand washing by employees, hand sanitizer in high contact locations. And this one says clean high touch items after each use. So this was kind of interesting. And again, it's employees, right? So this is not your guest protocol. This is required for employees. So what we've heard one business doing is like they're providing sanitizing wipes to all employees and telling them, if you touch something, clean it. If it's something frequent, clean it. So, for the employees to take care of doing that as well. Interestingly enough, on this clean high touch items after each use, what we saw in restaurant protocol is that it wasn't after each use, it was like on an hourly basis. So again, this is written for retail, so it's still very specific to retail. I'll be curious to see what the health orders say as far as specificity on this. But again, if you provide your sanitizing wipes and you have policies, you're telling your employees, these are high touch items, copying machine, whatever, wipe it down after you're finished. The only recommended, so understand the guidelines have required, and then they have recommended. And the only recommended for employees was group employees by shift to reduce exposure. Again, these guidelines were primarily written for retail. So that's why you'll see some of that here. Excuse me. So for customers and guests, required, we have to ensure, again, in bold, in red, ensure 6 feet between customers when possible. So the social distancing, again, really, really important. Also listed on the requirements is specify hours for at-risk populations, as appropriate. So keep that in mind, as appropriate. Again, written for retail, a little different environment, right? Where you come in, you shop, you leave. For an attraction with an extended stay, not so much. So as appropriate. Place hand sanitizers in high contact locations. Ask customers and guests not to enter if symptomatic. So maybe this is a sign that you are posting at your entrance. Maybe it's in your communications with them, particularly if you're doing online ticketing, just making sure that that information is available. And the other thing you want to consider, if you're doing online ticketing and you're telling them, don't enter if you're symptomatic, well then what's your return policy for that ticket? And be sure to address that. Stagger the entry of customers and guests. Again, this could be timed entry. It could be managing the flow. And then entertainment businesses that offer sports activities and sports leagues must follow guidance. And I have put the hyperlink to the general non-contact sports because that is specifically what was mentioned in the guidance. But again, if you look at the guidelines that we mentioned before, you need to follow those as well. So if you have a beach, follow that beach. Those guidelines. If you have a pool, follow those guidelines. If you have a spa, follow those guidelines. Recommended for customers and guests, consider having customers wear face coverings. It is not required for you to make your guests wear them. If you choose as a business to do so, you may do so. Have also recommended health questionnaire for symptoms, provide face coverings upon entry, where possible accept customers by appointment, and then a couple of the other things that were very detailed for retail. What I want to mention here that we're hearing, again, this is what we're hearing. If you're requiring guests to wear face coverings, you need to create policies for what to do with non-compliance. Because it's going to happen. You're going to get someone, if you say everybody entering has to wear a face covering, someone's going to come in and say, I don't wear face coverings. I'm not going to do it. So what are you going to do in that situation? We have some businesses that are starting to do like conflict resolution training for maybe their frontline staff. And so it makes, what we all need to think about is think about those points in your business where you are going to have these conversations. And where this conflict may occur, who are you putting there? You know, it may not be the frontline staff that you had, pre-COVID. So you may have to be very careful about who you put up front, because you want people who are able to effectively and efficiently handle those questions and conflicts as they may come in. All right. Physical places, that is the third category in the guidelines. Again, 6 foot distancing, social distancing, post social distancing signage, and disinfect high contact surfaces hourly. Okay, again, like this kind of conflicts with the one for the employees, right? But here they're not as specific. They're not saying after every use. So it is hourly. Clean merchandise before stocking, establish maximum capacity. So note that it's not saying specific to a fire code. You guys have to take a look at your business, your museum, your attraction, whatever it is, a type of business you have, and you can determine that capacity based on what you feel you are comfortable with in order to ensure that social distancing. And you may want to start lower and then increase as you and your staff become more comfortable with it. But they're not mandating a certain capacity amount at this point. They're just saying, think about that and think about what capacity you need to put into effect in order to ensure the social distancing. No self-service food stations or product samples. Food courts and food service operations must follow the restaurant, bars, banquet, and catering facilities guidance. What I will say is, again, the requirement to be seated while eating and drinking is not appearing on that guidance. It's appearing in the public health order. So if you offer food service, I'm also going to recommend you go to the public health order section and you read the Dine Safe public health order, because that appears to be the legal document that's identifying what needs to be done. Recommended for physical plants and places, recommended, right? Not required. Close once a week for deep cleaning, maximize available checkout space. Let's put / ticketing space, right? Use contactless payments where possible, and increase capacity for delivery and curbside. Again, very specific to retail, less so much for many of our businesses. Some of the things we're hearing that other businesses in Ohio are doing, one of them I thought was brilliant. They're actually, went to their local construction company and asked for help. And they're actually renting or have been given hand washing stations on loan from a local construction company that they're able to put. We've got another one that's offering like a Ghostbuster style backpack cruise. So they have the hand sanitizer or the sanitizing on the backs of their employees with the sprayers. And it's important to recognize, like, assign cleaning responsibility to everyone in this case, including guest services, in addition to housekeeping and maintenance. So one of the things we're hearing is, look, it's going to be hard to keep up with this. It needs to be everyone's responsibility, not just perhaps housekeeping and maintenance and who normally did these types of things, for a couple of reasons. Number one, our guests want to see you cleaning. I'll talk about that. We've heard a lot from other people about what they're doing, and these are some other tips we've gotten from folks outside or in the industry as well as outside of Ohio. A lot of folks are going to timed entry. I'm going to address pricing with time entry in a minute. Converting traffic to one way to better manage the flow. Look everywhere in your experience, and if pre-COVID, there were places where people tended to congregate. Take a look at restructuring that. No switchback queues. If you don't have a room for straight line queuing, then consider winding it. Anything goes at this point. So you just have to make sure you have 6-foot distances in all directions. And these are just some of the other things that folks have are doing. I thought one of the really creative ways, instead of handing out maps, paper maps, that they're actually, putting signage that says, take a photo of our map. This happened to be, I believe it's Columbus Zoo's doing this. So they have the map of the zoo, and they have signage that says, in lieu of, paper maps, we invite you to take a photo of this map and use it throughout your day. So the last section on the guidelines is what to do if there are confirmed cases. The requirements and the recommendations are here. We're still kind of trying to figure out what this means for our industry, to be honest, because unless you keep track of every person and every email, how in the world, right, would we be able to do that? So this is something that we're going to continue to explore to provide you guys more guidance with the contact tracing and what to do if someone is positive in your business. What will be the requirements of a business at that point for releasing information about guests. This is a link to, you're probably sitting there going, oh my gosh, it's going to cost some money. I can't get the supplies. I can't get the sanitizer. This is a great link to a Ohio Manufacturers Exchange, where they are offering up everything from hand sanitizer to disinfectant to partitions to floor symbols. And what you want to do, it's primarily for the healthcare community, but if you go to the other section on this website, you will see a slew of things that are going to be really valuable for our businesses. All right, so how do you create a plan? These are some tips that we've been picking up from elsewhere. And one of the things, again, we're all different. We each have a different customer experience. So consider role-playing through your customer experience with some of your staff. And for every interaction with a surface or another person, can you eliminate that? Or how do you amp up the cleaning? Training's going to be like really important. The training element, the making sure your staff understand the importance of this, not only for the health and safety, but for the fact, you have to keep open. Understand your plan's going to change. From every business we've heard from that's already open throughout the country, their plan's been changing. So you need to be flexible. Seek feedback from not only your employees, but maybe from your initial guests. Maybe it's a matter of, we've seen businesses say they're implementing exit surveys. So, how do we do? Is there something we could do better? Like, I think everybody understands this is a time where there aren't a lot of answers. And so we're all trying to figure this out. So embrace that and, make sure that the guests and your employees have an opportunity to provide feedback. One of the other things we're hearing is work with nearby attractions, particularly if you are in a place where people visit an attraction down the road, generally at the same time. If they're requiring guests to wear masks and you're not, then that could be confusing for the consumer. So is there a way to have a more cohesive guest experience. Can you brand your plan? So if you look at big budget, you can see Hilton, Hilton partnered with, I think it was Lysol, right? And so they basically have a plan. They're saying, this is our brand for health. This is our brand for cleaning. It's not like you have to put signs with everything at every point at that time. So can you simplify, just, saying this is your promise to them, so that you're able then to maybe use icons or something throughout your attraction to remind them, but not necessarily make it a bright red warning sign. And consider dry running with board members or other groups. One of the things I didn't mention before that I want to mention now, because I don't think I put it in here, but I think it's really important. Consider putting signage that says something like, see something we could do better, or, if you see an issue, and provide a phone number in your business, right? So that you're giving guests an opportunity to contact you if they see a problem. Again, guests know what to expect. You do not want them to call the local health department and report something, because we all know what happens, when a family with 4 kids walks into a restroom. If a guest enters right after that, says, oh my gosh, they're not keeping things clean, you don't want them to report something unnecessarily to the health department. So what you want to do is be open and give guests an opportunity to provide suggestions to you. They want to see you in action. Again, we've mentioned how being able to see the cleaning, know that things are different, is going to be really important for people to feel comfortable and to have trust. So bring your back of house to the front. But that doesn't mean you can't do this while being true to your brand and true to your experience. And we're going to be doing, I think, some additional trainings later, because I really, really strongly believe this. We have to remember what business we're in. And yes, this stuff is hard, and these regulations are hard, and it's just so, anti to what we do. However, we've always kept our customer safety number one. But they're not coming to us because they want to feel safe. They're coming to us for a reason. And don't forget that. Don't forget what business we're in, and see if you can lay that over the requirements to do what we can. So it depends on your brand, right? So there was a story of a amusement park elsewhere in the country that actually has a Monster Inc. type cleaning crew that's out there. Now, they're not really doing the cleaning, but they're emphasizing the fact that they're keeping things clean while staying true to the experience. I also want you to think about the fact that reduced capacity provides opportunities for some unique experiences. And we're going to talk pricing in a second, but understand, yes, it's hard. I understand, it's less revenue. So how do we look at the fact that now we have more intimate experiences? What can you do differently? What could you even provide, for an additional fee? We've heard, I'm hearing even from state parks right now, they're thinking about, just keep that in mind, thinking about, not confirmed, but for their public presentations, they're thinking about, hey, you can book a reservation for someone to do a presentation for your group. Wow, right? That is such an added value. Understand too, if you're feeling overwhelmed, not every building experience needs to open at the start. So you could phase in your opening. Consider building upon or adding outdoor experiences. And focus on the value proposition, not on what used to be. So understanding that as we open our doors, for many of us, it's going to look different, but that doesn't mean it's not an opportunity for us to switch things up and provide something in an experience that's really strong. Oh, we can do this. I know we can do this. So pricing, initial pricing, we hear this a lot. There are lots of opinions out there on what to do with pricing. Flexibility is going to be key. There's a study, the most recent one I saw was in Scotland, where 85% of guests expect to pay the same or more. Recognizing that the experience you're going to offer is more intimate, less crowded. Like, is there a reason to cut your price? Probably not. It's easier to lower pricing than it is to raise it later. So although you're looking at it as what you used to offer and thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have this exhibit open, what else can you offer? And so if you don't reduce your price, have some promotions ready to go, just in case you need to address the pricing. When would you consider lowering price? It could be based on a changed experience, right? With many things closed. It could also be based on understanding that the community is hurting. And so you may want to do that. Now, some folks, I believe Cincinnati Zoo is talking about reducing the pricing, but they're also, zoos are a little different because a lot of their funding comes from that local community. So they are way more aware of that and cognizant of that. So consider dynamic pricing, right? Can you use pricing to manage consumer behavior? So could you offer lower pricing for those who are purchasing tickets online? So if you want to encourage online and paperless transactions, then could you offer a lower price for that to be done? When you talk about timed entry, what we're hearing from other attractions throughout the country is that first hour is rough, right? It's kind of like looking at it as hotel inventory. If you don't fill that room, it's lost. So now with timed entries, if that's how you choose to do it, you have that first hour, you're going to have to try to incentivize, because if those tickets aren't purchased in that first hour, they're lost. So this is a way of addressing the lower pricing if you're sensitive to the local environment, by actually also encouraging behaviors to encourage people to come at times when you're struggling to get them in. Considering bundling in VIP experiences. We've heard this done elsewhere. Appeal to the altruistic nature. So, is there a way you could connect, if you're concerned about keeping your price the same, do you keep it the same, but then offer relief? So 3 things when setting prices, you really need to think about, is the experience actually better with less crowds? If it's dramatically changed, considering adding value, and really look at what are your objectives when you're setting pricing. Your employees and their families are going to be your most important audience when you first open up. So remember that chart when I showed you that people will be comfortable visiting when they see other people visiting? Take advantage of your employees and their families. And encourage people to help you by sharing on social media. I had a conversation this week on a webinar, and they're like, look, we're often uncomfortable saying help us. But right now, consumers understand that we need help. And so it's okay to say, hey, if you're here, share this on your social media, share it with your friends. Your first guests are going to likely be your most loyal ones, donors, members, pass holders. They're going to be the most forgiving and the most helpful, because they're going to give you feedback on your experiences. So ask them. Again, remember what we do. Remember the business we're in. At the very core, who we are, deep down, is we're in the hospitality business. We're in the experience business. Don't lose that. Your locals could be very important VIPs, and consider even first responders. This could be healthcare workers, grocery workers. It may be a nice thing to offer something back to them. So there was a woman from New Orleans that spoke about her experience post-Katrina. I recently heard. And she said, look, our first guests at post-Katrina, it wasn't about them getting out of the house. It was going back to where memories were made and wanting to start making memories again. So keep this in mind. That hasn't changed. Our direction on making memories hasn't changed, because that's still going to be why people come to visit. When you talk about your safety standards, when you talk about your guidelines, don't lead with this, right? Like, you still have to get them to the door. And we heard this week on a marketing discussion that the aspiration, it's people coming to our attractions. It's not going to be aspirational right now. It's going to be a little different. It's going to be, I want to escape. I want to spend time, quality time with the people I love. It is about getting out of the house at that point. You still have to get them to the door. So you want to say basically, right, why should they come to see you? But then ensure that they can trust you, that you have their safety concerns in mind. Be careful not to present all these guidelines as new. Again, we've been taking care of people our entire lives, in this industry. And so, it's not that we weren't cleaning before. So it's strengthened the social distancing guidelines, but don't present it as all new. Never, ever, ever claim you're COVID-free, because we can't be assured that we are. So be careful of your language and that you don't make that claim. Don't worry about communicating too much, right? Especially initially. And, be creative. Be creative with your messaging. We heard from one museum in Ohio that's actually it's like a presidential museum, and they're actually using their president in some of the signs, that are giving the message. So, don't forget to wear your, facial covering, or keep 6 feet apart, or whatever that may be. So you can be creative and true to your brand while we're putting these regulations into place. From a marketing standpoint, and I'm not going to go into great detail because I want to address your questions. We've been offering these deep dive marketing webinars along with follow-up Zoom chats, and I have links to the content from those, the first 3 that we've done. So you can click through and really understand, what's happening in the marketplace, about your messaging, where should you market. And it's not about starting back where you left off, right? So the market's changing, strategies are changing, and your strategies are likely going to change for the next 18 months as the market changes. So what we're really trying to do at OTA is understand, and everyone's looking for best practices, but understand best practices don't exist right now because we're all working on this together and having the conversation. So I highly advise you click through to those articles because they're just chock full of some really good information that might be useful for understanding consumer behavior right now. Also, a link here is a document that we developed probably within the first 2 weeks of this crisis that kind of outlined, what the Ohio Travel Association was doing, what we are doing, and what we plan to do in the future. So I invite you to look at this, and as it kind of forms, at least our roadmap based on our board, as well as surveys we've done with our members and the industry about what they want to see happen. Right now, we are focused on continuing to encourage the governor's office to reopen our industry. I speak with them at least daily, if not more often. We have gone to the media using social media to emphasize the importance. Our industry right now has, arts, entertainment, and recreation sector has an unemployment rate of more than 50%. That's not acceptable. And so we're trying to do as much as we can to get our businesses open, helping to ensure our businesses are ready, supporting economic relief, including new opportunities. So we're not, it's not just about let's get relief packages for the interim. With over a 50% unemployment rate, we need help in the future because travel won't rebound immediately and our limited capacity is going to be an issue. Understanding the marketing and then communicating with you. We're trying to communicate with you as much as possible without overloading your inbox. Our website, our COVID page has a daily update that, if it's not a Friday, you're not getting e-clips, you want information, go to that page. We update it as it says on a daily basis. All right, so I am going to stop talking and answer some of your questions. So Kelly?
Okay, so the first question to come in, does this order cover indoor concerts, performances, theater?
No, it does not. And it's kind of confusing because as of 9:30, there was indication on the governor's page that performance theaters were included, but it is not. It was a mistake on the part of the governor's office. Now, it hasn't been removed yet, so we need to look at that public order when it comes out. We need to see what that says and provide more guidance. But I have heard from the governor's office that the performance theaters, they are to remain closed, that it's not included in this order. On the other hand, I know that restaurants have been allowed to have some live entertainment. So my next step is going to be to look at the restaurant guidance and see what their guidance is for live entertainment, and see if there's not some gray area there, and some opportunities. So stay tuned on that information.
We also got a sort of related question to that, Melinda, about outdoor performance theaters with physical distancing.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything out there about that, does that kind of fall into the
same thing, right? Outdoor
Okay.
theaters, I have been told specifically not. But again, make sure they have a plan in place. Make sure you have a strategy in place and that you can pinpoint to your similarity to others that are open, and contact your local health department, right? It's this fine balance between us requesting confirmation for every single thing that's out there, because that just brings these new businesses to light. And honestly, you may have a better chance of getting open by working with your local health department and saying how you're different than some of the others that have been told by name to remain closed.
Thank you. What about playgrounds? Regarding playgrounds, does this include sports courts, picnic shelters, and pavilions?
So look at the guidance that's available for the sports. I'm assuming, if it's a campground, you need to look at your campground guidance, and you need to look at the order associated with the campgrounds, because that's probably going to be the one that's going to dominate. But if it's tennis courts, there's guidelines available. So I'm going to interpret that as being okay. Pavilions hasn't been clarified at all. And so again, it's trying to take a group of businesses that are so vastly different and putting them in a box, and it's just not feasible. So again, talk to your local health department. If you still struggle, call me, right? And we'll get verification. But part of it is going to be your interpretation of the guidance, your ability to link your experiences to what is existing, and working to get the approval at the local level first.
Okay. If you would like to ask a question aloud, you can use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. I can unmute you and you can ask your question to Melinda out loud. So that's also an option. Or you could use the chat feature or the Q&A feature, both functions at the bottom of your screen. It looks like we have someone raising their hand.
Yay!
Deanna. Go ahead, Deanna, whenever you're ready.
Is she there?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
So it's Dina from Marietta, Washington County Convention Visitor Bureau. And so my question is this, Melinda, if People's Bank Theater would get the okay from our local Washington County Health Department to reopen, is that going to fly with the state?
No. So understand that if the specific business type, in this case, performance theater, is named as being still closed, the local health department has no authority to usurp that.
Okay.
It's basically those experiences that aren't spelled out, right? Let's consider a campground that has amusement park or amusement rides, right?
Right.
As one example. So they haven't opened their amusement rides, but they're not an amusement park, right? That's the situation. So it's those gray areas where you're not called out specifically, that you have the opportunity to go to your local health department. You know, let's talk about even, you know, like, well, we had a question come in earlier about, you know, some of the dinner boats, right? Like, they're not going to call them out specifically that I know of. And we don't want to see businesses wait, right? Thinking that they're going to call out their specific business time. I mean, it is June. Like, we got to get these people open. And so in that case, my advice was, hey, ferry boats are allowed to open, restaurants are allowed to open, put your plan in place, go to your local health department and see what they say, right? If they say no, then we'll go back to governor. But if the dinner boat cruises was specifically spelled out as saying they're prohibited, then the local health department can't do anything about it. Does that make sense, Dina?
It does. There's a unique situation in Morgan County where the Twin City Opera House is a movie theater and a performance theater.
Ah, okay.
So I mean, you
can
go in to watch a movie, but you can't go in to watch a play. That's right. Kind of weird.
I know. I know. The word rational was never mentioned. Yeah. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. But they can open as a movie theater. That's allowed.
Yeah, they plan to.
Good. Good. I'm very glad. Any other questions?
Yes, we do have one more raise your hand coming through.
Excellent.
Go ahead, Diana, whenever you're ready.
Yes, good morning. This is Diane Cordell from the Holiday Inn, Dayton, Fairborn, Ohio.
Hi,
here in the Greene County area. Mm-hmm. My question is, we're trying to get clarification on seating. We read things that say 10 people at a round, yet at a long, they need to be 6 feet apart for individuals and, you know, for classroom style seating. And we haven't reopened yet any of our catering or meeting space. We just have concerns on how to even stage rooms. Where would we get that clarification?
It kind of is in line with the question I have out to them right now, right? With that very thing. Like you're allowing, you know, 300 people to come in for a wedding reception. My goodness, you know, we can come in for meetings and control that much easier. So the reality is it's that 6 foot distancing. Like that, I'm going to assume is going to be into play. The difference, and I'd be curious to see how wedding reception venues are handling it, right? So you bring up a really good point, because now I'm assuming with a wedding reception, you got some family units together. So understand you don't have to social distance between the family units or between members of the family. But in a meeting situation, you're going to have people that aren't in a family unit. So they basically all have to be distanced 6 feet.
And I think we that part is somewhat okay, but you know as well as I do, in some wedding venues, it's not all family units, and it's going to be very hard for companies or corporations to return to classroom style trainings when normally at a 6 foot long you would have at least 2 individuals. We can place the tables 6 feet apart, but your room looks pretty stark if you have, you know, 36 foot tables. You only can seat 30 people, where now you used to be able to seat, you know, 200. So yeah, the financial rebound on that is it's non-equivalent. I mean, we can't do that. And we want to do it safely, of course, but it just doesn't seem to make sense. I just don't know where to go with it even. So I appreciate this call today, but we're so confused on that. So.
Oh, I agree. I think there's so much. One thing I didn't mention up front is, like, I should have said, I don't have all the answers, right? But what I'm here for is to hear what your issues are. And so that's a big one. That's a huge one. I was on a call earlier and they were saying, look, yeah, but by reducing capacity, reducing revenue. And I'm like, I get it. Like I get it. I know, I know this is terrible. And you have to make, I think a business decision. Can you open up with these requirements? That's at the end of the day, I don't know how we're going to get around this 6-foot issue. However,
right.
Let's send me an email just to remind me, and let's
okay.
Right, and figure out if we can come up with some guidelines more specifically. I'm also speaking to Director of Sales and GMs at Cleveland Hotels next week, so I may have some guidance for you after that. Well, because we're addressing this very issue.
All right, and can I ask just one quick follow-up question? We just wanted to get clarification too, and I'll send this in the email to you as well, but the information we read, it has the 300-person wedding. However, like our ballroom could seat that, and then we have a restaurant and we have another smaller ballroom. My understanding is it's 300 overall for the whole hotel seating, and I want to make sure that we are following those guidelines.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I think the whole event guidelines have not been necessarily thought out and presented yet. So let's see if we can't put our heads together and come up with some recommendations.
All right, thank you.
You're so welcome.
Okay, so we have another question that came through, a written question. Is there consideration for approval of small outdoor family amusement parks in our area, places like Sluggers and Putters or Fun Time Fun Park? Or will they remain in the same bucket as major parks like Cedar Point and Kings Island?
Okay, I'm going to bring you back to this page, right? There we go. So it's a really good question. I mean, it has to do with the definitions. It has to do with putting all of these things into one bucket. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm gonna look this up on my phone while we're talking. There was even mention of, okay, let me look. Because you're right. Like, if you can qualify yourself as a recreation center, or why would indoor family entertainment centers be open but outdoor family entertainment centers not be open? That I don't understand. And so I think it has to do with just the language, the verbiage. And in your situation, first of all, don't call yourself an amusement park. But go to your local health department and say, look, indoor family entertainment centers are permitted to open. I offer I don't know what business you're representing, but my advice would be you go to your health department, you say, look, we're an indoor outdoor family entertainment center. This is what we have to offer. Can we open? And I'm still, while we continue, I'm going to look this up because I wanted to see what they say, because they mentioned the word funplexes. I don't understand. As far as funplexes, what is that? Sounds to me that your business is very similar to Funplex. Again, we're trying to find answers, and sometimes they're a little fuzzy. So it's about doing the best we can to interpret it and figure out what that means. And also, you know, doing what we can to get everybody else open, right? Like we need to get folks open. Any other questions, thoughts?
Yeah, so we do have a couple more written questions that came
Sure.
in.
Sure.
Can't you get around the 6-foot issue with temporary barriers?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So, and that's specific in the guidelines. If you can't maintain the 6-foot distance, you can install the barriers. And I invite you to go to that link for the Ohio manufacturers that are, you know, they do have some barriers available. So let's go back to Diana's, like just thinking about that, right? So what if you had a meeting space, right? And you couldn't necessarily do the spacing with a 6-foot distance, but could you, you know, even have some plastic barriers between attendees? Is there a way we could be creative with that? I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah, and the same person wrote a comment. So if the barriers are okay, then a meeting space venue could use them to space people.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, I mean, that's just my thought. Again, you know, we have to be creative. We have to think, how do we do this? Seems to me like that could be a logical way. So
Okay.
we'll look into that because I think that's interesting. Okay, back on that whole word of fun. So in the original order, funplexes, one word, was mentioned as being closed. Now, according to, and I'm on the coronavirusohio.gov site right now, they are saying, okay, amusement parks, theme parks, outdoor water parks, children's play centers, playgrounds, and funplexes, indoor family entertainment facilities are closed. Outdoor playground and funplexes are permitted to open June 10. But at the same time, the news release said indoor family entertainment centers are permitted to open. So again, the answer or the question about the you know, amusement place, I would look to the public health order when it comes out and see specifically how that relates to you, because it sounds like you are a funplex.
Okay, so we had a couple more written ones come in. I run an agritourism facility. We have a gift shop, day camps, weddings, playgrounds. Do you think that if I open this stuff now under these guidelines, would I be able to hold our farm fall festival?
Oh, I don't know. You know, I've heard from elsewhere that events and festivals, like some folks are planning, some folks are starting to do things. And again, if you go back to the question I said of like, we need to clarify this stuff, that is, what about festivals and events? Like, if county fairs are available to open, then what about private events in private festivals? There's no guidance for that. I know some communities that are starting to. They are starting to plan. What we've heard from our marketing partners in some of our webinars is like the advice has been, start prepping now. Start prepping your audience now, understanding that you likely have an email list. Keep in contact with them. Make sure they know that you're thinking of them and that you're hoping to do it. But there's just uncertainty now. I'm going to guess by the end of this month, we're going to get a lot of these questions resolved, because literally, like once a day, twice a day, I'm trying to shoot these questions over to try to get clarification. I know it didn't answer it specifically, but I wouldn't necessarily say it can't happen right now. Just how to go about it, we may need to talk about.
Okay, thanks, Melinda. When do you think the public health order will be issued for museums?
I have no idea. I kept thinking it was going to be out. We've been checking. There's we're getting no direction on when they're going to have that out. As soon as it is, we will let you know. Because again, that could provide more detail. If you look at the residential and day camp public order, like that was just released. It took them a few days to get that up. So we have no idea when that order will be released.
Okay, we have another raised hand. Whenever you're ready.
Hey, it's Dina again. So they can open up on the 10th, but they may not know what they have to do until the 9th.
I know it, right?
I'm sorry, but I have, one of our museums from Marietta on speakerphone listening with me right now. And, everybody's just at their wits' end.
Oh, I know. So are we.
But we don't know what to do to.
Yeah.
If there's anybody out there listening that can, it has the governor's ear. I know that Melinda, I know you do, and I appreciate OTA so much. But wow, we've got to get this answered as soon as possible.
Oh, it's like I said, what happened with the restaurants is they didn't even know until the night before. So we're continuing to press for it. I had someone ask it at a meeting this morning with the governor. I haven't heard back from them yet. So, I mean, trust me, Dina, we understand. And
I know you do.
are working it's not like we're just sitting back and saying, oh, I hope they release it soon. We're trying to get the public order out as soon as possible.
And we appreciate that, Mel. We really do.
I know it's frustrating. It's frustrating for us too, and that's why we did the webinar, because we know you guys are frustrated. If we're frustrated, we know you guys are at your wits' end. So knowing that we don't have all the answers, we thought it was really important to at least give you guys a chance to okay, here's the answers we do have. Here's the questions we still have. What other questions do you have? How do we make sense of all this?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate, it feels really good knowing that we have an advocate, at the OTA who's doing this work for us. Sometimes we feel small or, really far away from Columbus, and and I feel like we have that connection with you. And I'm not trying to turn this into a brag on Melinda and everybody at OTA Day, but right now I do want to let you know publicly how much we appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you. That means a lot. That means a lot to me. I'm sure it means a lot to Kelly and Janet. Janet's on the phone too, and we appreciate it. And we are going to have one of the things, we're going to have a second one on Tuesday. I believe Tuesday. What time is that, Kelly?
11:30.
11:30. Just because we know we may hear more, right? So we wanted to start the conversation now. Some of the information may be similar, but honestly, it's so funny, Dina, because actually every day that, I change the information because we learn more. So hopefully we will know even more by then, but we are pushing to get that public order out as soon as possible.
Those are all the questions that have come in so far.
Okay, well, and I also want to, I'm gonna give you my cell number so that if you do have a question, or frankly, if you need to vent or you need to chat, feel free to call me. It's 419-366-4391. And, we welcome you guys reaching out to us. because we really do. It's such such a weird time, and that it will take all of us just communicating together and understanding, you know, we're united as an industry. We got to help each other out, and figure out things as we go. So I welcome, you know, any calls, texts, emails with questions you may have. And anything else, Kelly, or are we good?
I think we're good.
All right.
We have some thank yous coming in through the chat, so.
Aw, bless you all.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, and hope to see you again on Tuesday, June 9 at 11:30 if you have any other questions.
And hopefully we'll have more answers.
Yes.
All right. Thanks all.